I'm just going to throw the floor open to my guests this evening to get a sense of whether there's going to be a change in the political dynamics inside, outside Parliament, especially up to 2024. Tom Vadakkan of the BJP is now joining me this evening. Dr. Syed Naseer Hussain of the Congress Party. Pratim Ranjan Bose, political analyst. Sanjay Kumar, professor, CSDS and political analyst. I'm actually going to start with the Congress this evening, Mr. Naseer Hussain. Don't you think, or do you think rather, the selection of Yashwant Sinha as your presidential candidate is actually a story of a missed opportunity?
Pallavi, I don't think that there is any issue in the candidature of the opposition parties. The government did not take the first step to have a consensus candidate. Now, the government from its side could have definitely tried, especially when they were trying to put a tribal lady, they could have gone for a consensus. They could have tried for a consensus. That was not there. We were forced to have an opposition candidate, and opposition parties did meet. Yashwant Sinha ji, in his own right, he has marked himself as an outstanding statesman, politician, bureaucrat, and so on. And he is a known face in the country. He has been campaigning on certain issues which matters the people of the country for the past several years also. So there was a consensus on Mr. Yashwant Sinha's name, and we all political parties, most of them said that he should be our candidate. That's how we went for his candidature. And after filing the nomination, after declaring the candidature and filing the nomination, comes the NDS candidate. Now, there could be issues with certain political parties, because in a country like India, where we have elections in different states, where we have alliances and counter alliances in different states, where we have issues in different states, there may be one or two parties here and there who could have slipped. And this is not the first time that is happening. This has happened during the time of Pratibha Patil ji, when she was put up as a candidate by the UPA, when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was the candidate for president the other time. Even when Mr. Kovind was put up as a candidate by NDA, they were cross-voting, or at the last moment, some parties did shift, both from the BJP's alliance, from NDA, and also some from UPA also.
Yes, yes, you're correct there. I remember that Shiv Sena decided to support Pratibha Patil, even though they were a part of NDA, because she, of course, comes from Maharashtra. Mr. Hussain, I don't disagree with you. I think Yashwant Sinha does have a right to contest elections. But, I mean, it's not that no one reached out to you. What stopped you from actually changing your mind and going ahead and supporting Draupadi Murmu? But I'm going to come to your response on that in a bit. Mr. Tom Vadakkan, you know, do you agree with Mr. Hussain when he says that the government or the BJP could have actually first reached out with the name to the opposition parties and ensure it's a complete consensus? Or is it that you did not do so because you wanted to have that political point later, look, we told you so, the opposition is anti-tribal and anti-woman. You wanted that opportunity.
Pallavi, that's not correct. We did that outreach. The BJP president was involved in it directly, talking across political spectrum to the top people of different political parties, but they had their reservation. There was this feeling that, well, you know, opposition would put up a candidate. It was like Hindi में कहते हैं ना, जिद पकड़ा, और ये था कि जिद है इतना कि भाई हम जो करें वो सही. हमने कोशिश जरूर किया कि रीच आउट करें, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि वो एक what you call, you know, the sense of revenge perhaps.
No.
हमारा candidate, opposition, unity.
अरे आप लोग also didn't vote for Pranab Mukherjee en masse, na?
No. Pranab Mukherjee was a different case. If you want to open that case, I can go till the program ends on that. Okay. But here was an issue, an outreach had been done, and the leader, my leader, the BJP president, personally spoke to top leaders of different political parties. They didn't come along. Then finally we had no option but announcing the candidate. It was not that consensus happens with two sides, not one side exploring a possibility, but if there's no support, Pallavi, tell me, what do we do?
Okay. Okay, Mr. Bose, this question to you. is that do you think it was actually made more political sense for the opposition if they would have said, okay, here's a woman, here's a tribal woman, we have our own candidate, but doesn't matter. We'll give up our own candidate, but for the sake of these 2 points, because she's a woman and she's a tribal woman, we will withdraw our candidate. Do you think this is what the opposition should have done and at least actually scored more points by doing so? Or is it a zid, as Tom Vadakkan is talking about?
Pallavi, in a very spinning track, what you do is you play on the back foot to give yourself more time to see where the ball turns and how the ball turns. So, if I look at it from opposition's perspective, let me assume that there has been politics. So BJP was doing its politics. So from the opposition's point of view, it was they who jumped up first. They took the first move. So you went for the shot and you just missed it. And then you didn't try to correct it. And now look what is the situation they are. Mr. Sinha, who has been in Trinamool, and he made the announcement first on Twitter.
Yes.
And today, we don't know whether Trinamool will support him or not. It's a funny situation. He's practically, I am expecting him to lose hands down. That is the situation. So how can they just blame it on BJP? They must know that BJP will do all tricks. So they should safeguard their position. What stopped them from doing that? So that answers your question that, you first fixed it that I have to beat. Now, what you are beating, you first know.
I know, I agree. Mr. Bose, maybe as a political party, the opposition party should have been more astute in second guessing who that name could be. And the fact is that Mamata Banerjee herself said it when she said, I wish they had told me earlier, maybe I would have thought differently. Though I'll tell you something, a very senior Trinamool Congress leader tells me that a maximum number of votes for Yashwant Sinha is actually going to come from Bengal. We'll have to wait for the counting because I think that's going to throw up even more of those revelations. And this is where I want to bring in Mr. Sanjay Kumar. Let's not get into whether they should have withdrawn or not. We have a name here of Yashwant Sinha. We have a name of Jagdeep Dhankar, which has been put up as a vice president candidate by the NDA, a Margaret Alva and a Draupadi Murmu. Do you think this presidential, vice presidential elections will go down in history and the race to 2024 as one which managed to change the political permutations and combinations?
I don't think that I would be willing to draw any parallel or take any lessons from what is going to happen in the presidential election and vice presidential election and what will happen eventually in 2024. I think we are talking about the presidential election. There are compulsions with several, parties in opposition. Even if they wanted to support Yashwant Sinha, they can't do that because of local, state level compulsions. And the other panelists have already talked about that. I don't think that the parties which are not supporting the opposition candidate in presidential election are not likely to align or likely to align with BJP when it comes to 2024. So I am not willing to draw any parallel between what is going to happen in when it comes to voting tomorrow for the presidential election and how the equations are going to be for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Lok Sabha elections are different, presidential elections are different. So the equations are going to be very different.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, now